your story point of view, how has that changed the way you do things, and what kind of can you do for the companies that are now, either partially or fully remote?
Yeah. So we have been asked for years to do e-learning, but you've probably guessed from me saying I wouldn't hold a microphone the first time I held it, that the idea of doing something online, oh my God, we need to be in the space.
Yes, I need to connect with people.
We need to connect with people, the atmosphere you create. And I genuinely believe that because it was so good. When it was working, and you could really have quite transformational times where people would really, and it's not that what we're doing is rocket science. If anything, what we've spent years on doing is simplifying it, but sometimes it unlocks something in someone, often that they realise they have a right to speak, or that their voice is interesting, and it can be a really big emotional experience as well, and quite a powerful experience. And we're like, how can you do that online? And then we realised we were all gonna be eating rats. So we were lucky. We had a client who we had a regular monthly session with, who was doing everything online, and said they were happy for us to sort of learn the first go with them, which was so kind. And it was brilliant. I really like it. Of course I was wrong, because this was my idea. This is what we're doing. Why don't we do this? This is what we're doing. Yeah.
Naturally.
But I love it in certain circumstances. So we do about a third of our work in the museum sector. Yeah. That doesn't really work online, because we're generally helping people to be in rooms with others.
Immersive experience a little bit, right?
Well, just that they're talking to people in the space, not online. So it's a difficult thing to learn online. It's people doing tour guides, being room guides, doing handling sessions. Lots of very interactive. It's all interaction. But we used to have larger groups and do our signature workshop is called Sharing the Message, and it's a one day. By the end of it, you've learned, you've got a 5-minute presentation, and you've gone through 10, 12 exercises. So you've learned a whole series of stuff. It's a one-day workshop. One day online is quite an exhausting experience, especially at the very start of Zoom when people were new to it. So we're like, oof. So actually, we've cut it down into 2 half days. So we meet people for 30 minutes, get to know us, set a bit of pre-work, 3.5 hours, a week, a little bit of homework to mull it over, let it digest. Another week, beautiful, really nice. The first week you're doing all your thinking, the second week you're doing all your speaking in breakout rooms. And actually, because they're not paying for the room, they're not paying for hotels, they're not, that often we've got smaller groups and you run it a couple of times. So if you've got 8 people on your screen instead of 16, gorgeous. You get to see everyone, nobody's hiding at the back, you can pull everyone in, people are more comfortable to speak and to have sort of conversations around the effects of particular bit, and they're not shattered by the end. So it's been really interesting. I like it a lot. We have had clients who said you need to do it as one whole day. So you're doing 8 hours on Zoom with 24 people. Not enjoyable. It's not enjoyable. Yeah. But if that's the only way that people can get, I'll take the work if you're thinking of offering us the work. Let me come in. No. It's not that it's not enjoyable, it's not as enjoyable because you're not getting to really be able to eke out stuff from everyone. And I think often when you've got larger groups, the people who need it most get to disappear. So, we make sure everyone's got their cameras on all the time and all these sorts of things. But actually, even now, what are we, coming up to 3 years into this madness, people still turn up without their cameras on. It's an extraordinary thing, how you think you can be in a space with people.
I think we're past the stage now where it's novelty. So when it was novelty, people were getting used to it. Then it's the period where people got used to it, and that was a day-to-day. And now we kind of go through a motion where people are a little bit fed up, right? There's the Zoom overload, there's the million meetings, and I observe my partner who works from home full-time. And there are occasions where I would work from home and I could overhear him, and I'm thinking meeting after meeting after meeting after. And kudos to him, he's used to that. But I'm tired of the idea of him being this hour 4, and there's been no break from a meeting. So I'm just like, wow, this is this is taxing. So I can see how actually I think that the idea of breaking it up is perfect, because it allows you to take a moment and actually think, I need to now think how I'm going to go about it.
And within the workshop, there's bits where we set exercises, then I'm like, feel free to turn your camera off whilst you're writing, have your privacy whilst you're working.
Yeah.
Come back, we're going to chat, we're going to have a break, come back, we're going to discuss what happened. I think it's really important to bring it back in and to hear other people's voices and to be able to, feedback on. I completely get it. I would turn my camera off, but I'm at the front, so you can't turn your camera off because I've asked you not to.
How many times do I say? Look at me.
Goodness sake.
Just look at me. Let's connect. But you know what? This is so important. I know it's uncomfortable, and kudos to you for being honest. It's uncomfortable to you. Probably not so much now, but at the beginning for sure. And there are some things you can't replicate online that you do in real life. However, because of what happened and because of the new reality we found ourselves in, I think it's just something that we have to accept is here to stay.
Oh, absolutely. And genuinely, I like it. We work with people all around the world off the back of this. So, we're working with a company based in Leeds who have offices in Cape Town and in Barbados and in New
100%.
Zealand and in Canada. Everybody's coming in. I mean, it's slightly earlier in the morning maybe, but it's an opportunity to work with everyone.
Back in the day, it wouldn't have happened. No one would fly them from Cape Town for a one-day workshop, right? I mean, unless you do, if Josh is still available. But
I was flown to Orlando for a one-day workshop.
I'm not bragging, but it happened.
It's because it was in the October half term. So I had no children's responsibilities and I was in Orlando. So that was quite fun.
Did you go to Disney World?
Oh, God, no.
Oh, you did, didn't you?
No, God, no. I went to the pool.
Still good in October, to be honest.
It was so good. I was just like, this is ridiculous. So I got them to change my flight for an extra day. I was like, I'm staying here an extra day. Thank you very much.
Josh, I want to finish on something that I think everyone should probably think about. Put you on the spot a little bit here. If I asked you something that might not be the most in-depth question right now, but just a general 3 rules for any right now to become a better storyteller. Right now, today, you don't know anything about anyone listening, but the things that you learned over 20 years of doing it, what are the 3 most universal things that people should start thinking about or doing right now?
The first is I keep saying connection. I appreciate it's become overused as a word today, but storytelling is about the relationship that you have with the story, that you have with the audience, and therefore that they have with the story. That's what you're doing. The beauty about being a storytelling performer, when that was my job, is I didn't have to learn anything off by heart. You know your material well enough that you're spontaneously adapting things all the time, depending on the reactions you're getting from the people in front of you. So the first rule is do not script your stuff, because if you script stuff, it's in written English. Written English is not how we speak. No, it's more formalized, it's more structured, it has different word order almost.
And people know you're reading.
Well, it becomes a lecture.
Yeah, it's a lecture.
A lecture is what happens in academia, not what happens with the people you love the most when you're really connected.
And think about your best professors on that note. Yeah. They're normally not the ones standing there reading out, right? Not.
I mean, if you look in politics in this country and in America, the last few years have been dominated by people who make a point of being less formal.
Yep.
That's the only thing that they're offering right now. Yep. Everyone's like, oh my God.
I'm connecting with that.
It's true. It's so embarrassing. But it's happened left and right.
Everything can be weaponized, I'm afraid.
No, but it's all about just being there. So actually, the first thing I would say is don't write it all out. Work out what you want to say and practice it out loud before. Because most people do everything's written or typed, I suppose. Type, think,
yeah.
type, cut and paste, I'm nervous, more coffee, up till 3 in the morning, cut and paste, heart pounding in the car into work, absolutely pounding, going through it in your head, so not actually going through it, just thinking and then this bit and then this bit, stand in front of your audience, start speaking, and it all falls apart. It's the first time you've spoken it out loud. It is your first spoken draft. You would never send in to your manager your first written draft. Yeah. You would redo it. So why are you sharing your first spoken draft? Why not say it out loud first? Go, oh my God, that sounded awful. This bit was good, this bit was good, this bit needs changing. It's twice as long as I thought. It's half the length that I thought. How do you know how long it is until you've said it?
That's so true.
So why would you say that in front of people? Do it yourself. So even, not in front of a mirror, who wants to look at themselves, but just out loud.
Yeah,
even
just
in
so you
the
can
car,
hear yourself.
on the tube. When I used to do the museums, the tours, it was exactly 2 miles from my front door of my flat then. And when I used to do them in half term, to prepare myself on the day of the tour, I would do the whole tour on the walk up the high street. I would have the sarcophagus here, I would have, all the different pieces, the walrus, the wonderful walrus, and I would do the entire thing out loud as I went. People go, oh my God, what did people think you're about? No one looks at you. No one's interested in
We're
anyone.
London guys. No one.
No one's interested. So say it out loud, practice it out loud, and then you're ready. You've embodied it, you've heard yourself. It's much easier. That is the golden tip. The second one is, if you want people to have a relationship with what you're talking about, you need to work out your relationship with what you're talking about, not just representing it. So you're talking, you need to think, what do I think and feel about this subject? If you want to have an authentic voice, well, what is your authentic voice? What is your position and take on it?
Even if you don't agree / don't
Yeah,
care,
absolutely.
just convey that.
Absolutely. Not necessarily convey that, but work it out for yourself where
Yeah.
you stand with it. So we do an exercise that's simply called like, dislike, what. And it's based on the idea that in life, as humans, anything we meet, whether it's you're on a first date, you're having a pizza, you're at the cinema, anything you meet, you're either going to like it, not like it, or not get it. That is your reaction. So that should be the first thing you do when you're starting to prepare something, is go through the whole concept and think, what are all the things I like about this? What am I going to enjoy talking about? What are all the issues I have? Which ones can I bring up? Which ones can't I bring up? But let's acknowledge them so they don't just bleed out of me in body language when I talk about them. And what are the questions I have? What are the bits I need to look up? Because I'm going to be asked questions about the bits I don't get, because that's when I'm not convincing. So what do I need to do? And then, once you've done that for yourself, flip it over, think of your audience. That's why you don't write something, because it's not for everyone, it's just for this audience. What are they going to like, dislike, and question about this? I can connect with all the things we like. Their dislikes, I need to find a way to talk about it, to mitigate it, to find a way around, to acknowledge it in some way. And I need to answer their questions so that they don't just have that question buzzing around their head. They're actually listening to me when I'm speaking to them. So that is a hugely helpful exercise or tip to do.
I also imagine for you as a speaker, it's giving you the confidence, because I've noticed
Then you say you know your stuff.
Exactly. A lot of things where people are really particularly bad, from what I've noticed at speaking, is when they know they're insecure about the knowledge around the topic.
Gotcha.
So they either bombard you with information so you do not have an opportunity to ask a question.
It's done. Yeah.
Don't push that away and don't talk to me. Or they get nervous, they miss what they want to say, they do a lot of like, and they do it and they get super stressed, which obviously the audience picks up quite immediately. And that's all stemming from the fact that you yourself are not ready to confront
Absolutely.
that topic.
Why would somebody understand something that you're talking about that you don't understand?
Yeah.
How would that make sense?
Very important.
But how would that make sense?
Very important.
And yet people just think, well, I'll just rattle through this. Plus, you've spoken quicker and less coherently about it.
Yeah.
Why are they asking me questions about that? Because it made no sense whatsoever.
100%.
You didn't get it. Another thing I would say is look at descriptive language. Look at visually descriptive language, telling people what stuff looks like. So if in your organisation, and I know your organisation, so it's not the case at Highline, representing, but in most organisations we've worked, they have their own language. There is their own form of jargon, their own most used words.
For sure.
Though that language is not useful. That language is not specific, it's not precise, it's not descriptive, and actually it gets used so frequently that it loses meaning.
Yeah.
We think it's a shortcut, but actually those words don't land. They just float past us and they don't grasp us. How can you get past that? You tell people what things look like. Instead of saying it's siloed working, you describe what the issue is with the relationship between your colleagues. It takes an extra 10 words, but everybody gets it. It was a tricky situation. Everyone's got a different idea what that is. You describe the tricky situation. But it's also about, if you want to highlight or emphasize particular parts of what you're talking about, you're talking to someone for 5 minutes, for 40 minutes, for however long it is. They're listening, they're drifting in and out of listening, because who can listen for that long? And when they're there, They're just taking on what you're saying, and the bits that they're going to find most important are the bits that are most important to them.
Right.
Are they the bits that are most important for you to get them to do what you want them to do? Probably not. So you need to emphasize those bits. And one way to emphasize it is to slow things down by having a descriptive moment. Describe it and say what it looks like. If people visualize it in their mind, they're not visualizing their own version. It's the one you wanted. Also, if you visualize something, it's more likely to be stored in your long-term memory. So they'll remember that bit, it will stand out.
Yeah.
So sprinkled delicately, visual description slows it down, helps people visualize and imagine themselves into the reality of what you're talking about, makes them remember it, and gives clarity.
Very important.
Quite handy.
I think just slow everything down. We'll do a slow motion version of that with loads of visualization. This was a very important point.
Yeah.
Point 3.
Point 3, I would say if you're preparing a presentation, have a really clear structure to what you're saying. And I did traditional folk tales I told for 20-ish years. Not every culture, not every story have I read clearly. However, of all the ones that I've told, and certainly in the Western European tradition and in many of the African trickster tales I told, everything's chronological.
Right.
It's told in the order it happens. Has happened, is happening, or will happen.
Right.
And I think the reason behind that is our brains automatically try and make sense of what we hear by imagining
an
those
outcome, and
cause and effect. So it means that we can get quite complicated messages into a structure.
Yeah, relatively logical structure.
Yeah, that both us and our audience's brain will follow and will hold on to. But actually, just always starting beginning, middle, and end isn't necessarily that interesting. So we say you have a hook at the start, a statement, a question, an amazing stat or fact, something that makes people go, oh my God, let me hear this. So if you think of like a big sort of spread in the Sunday papers, it's not the headline. That kind of makes you interested. The subheading is interesting. There's a pull-out quote on page 2, massive in italics, completely out of context. You see that, you read the article. That is your hook. So you put one of these at the front. The beginning gives you the status quo, the situation, the need, whatever it might be. The middle, cause and effect, all the different storytelling techniques that you've got there. The end is there to show you the difference from the beginning so that you can compare. There are many structures, but there's a really simple one. And then hook, beginning, middle, end, handover. I mentioned it before, and the reason I'm telling you this is because this is what I want you to do with it, and now off you go. And if you have that, it stops you going blah 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 in 100 directions, which keeps pulling your audience's attention away from the general thrust of what you want to say. You want to keep them listening in a way that makes it easy. You've emphasized certain bits so they know what's important, why you do the editing for them. You keep them on a simple journey so that they know where they're going. They know who you are and what your values are in relation to what you're talking about. You're going to be much more believable. Much more believable. Much better than making sure there's a joke in there. Or,
charming your way through
it. People who are charming are so lovely to be around. It's so lovely. But
for a short time,
not
but
nourishing.
not that much
It's not nourishing.
substance to it, is it?
Well, no, it's great, but the fourth time you meet them, you realise it's the same. I'm sure you said this last time.
And also why you saying the same to Karen.
Yes, exactly. I'm the special one. Yeah.
Oh, us trainers, we're always guilty of that. So that's a bad industry trait.
No, and it's wonderful.
It works in the environment though.
Because you're with people for 30 minutes.
Exactly.
You are building relationships in a short amount of time when other things are happening. And it's actually much more about making people feel comfortable in the moment, and that is the purpose of charm, and that is the purpose of charisma. But within a presentation, it does work, but it doesn't work repeatedly. It doesn't work repeatedly. Putting politics completely to one side, but just looking at the speaker, Boris Johnson was named as the most wonderful speaker for years. The most wonderful, and it's all bluster and charm, and oh, isn't he a character? But once you become Prime Minister, and we see it every day,
and also
it doesn't really work anymore.
You stop for a second and listen to what he says. There's
exactly.
No
so it's but it was wonderful as an after-dinner speaker. He's the perfect after dinner speaker.
Yeah.
Everyone's had a few drinks. Oh, brilliant! I've seen this guy. I know this guy, and it just raises the atmosphere and all that. Perfect. I mean, you couldn't get a better one.
Until.
But if you've heard it 3 times, then it doesn't work.
Or
So
if it happens during a pandemic where people are dealing with real issues.
putting the politics aside, just looking at the way that it was, the way that was speaking. So I think that's an example of charm and charisma, but that doesn't connect in that way. So it's much easier actually if we have another colleague who works with us, Ben, he's absolutely brilliant for body language, voice, breath, presence, and online and in the space, and really having confidence. And you're talking about having confidence in your right to speak and what you're talking about. And actually, that's what it's all about with him. We were looking for presence, and at first I kept thinking, what is presence? And actually, the word charisma. Well, no, the word charisma and charm came up a lot when we talked about it, but it's not really. Presence is a confidence in your right to speak. I have a right to be here and to take this time.
And comfort as well, I think.
I'm comfortable doing this because I know what I'm talking about, and actually I have every reason to do this. And thirdly, that they are present. They are in the space for the duration. They're not on autopilot. And that's so hard. That is so hard. There isn't a single person listening here who has listened all the way through and who hasn't drifted away. We all drift away. But to have presence is to be able to stay in the space whilst you're talking from beginning to end, so that you can observe what's happening around you and adapt and change what needs to be to meet their needs, as well as your need of what you need to get across. And that's where charm doesn't work, because it's too much buttering up. But with presence, it has the same effect of, it's very attractive. What is it with this person? But you don't need, it doesn't need to be the showbiz kind of, hey. Brian Ferry, exactly, the flirt, it is, it's the flirt, exactly.
I've met, just to kind of conclude on that, I've met some of the worst salespeople in our industry for sure that were the biggest flirts, and even though they were getting a lot of short-term success, meaning like a one-off sign-ups, or people that would sign up for a gym, go twice and never show up, this sort of a thing. And then you had what you describe as a confident presence, a person who understands, who listens, who can identify how do we, as a company, as a movement, can we actually improve what's bothering you? These were the people that were getting the people, and those people are still there. And I think this is what I want to kind of also convey to people, is the charm, the feeling good about yourself lasts for the second that it's there. It's like buying a pair of new shoes when you're sad. It's nice for about 10 minutes and then you put it back in a box. So it's like, think about the substance and the real message behind it and how that resonates with you, and not the kind of 5-second good feeling because somebody that's good looking looked at you or gave you attention.
Having said that, when you see me walking around, good-looking people, have a look.
Have a look. Don't be shy.
Share that charm.
Thank you so much, Josh. That's been amazing.
Good. Thank you.
And for all of you, this is going to be an edited website.
Yes. Yes. So we have a website called thewholestory.org.uk, and actually, Lily and I have been working on creating like a kind of newslettery, bloggy type thing that's going to start in the new year, and probably every 2 weeks we're just going to send out one tip. So we'll do that for 2-3 months, and that way just looking at it, 1 page maximum, just looking at what is it, what are different issues people have, and opening up a bit of discussion around that, giving some ideas.
Amazing.
So it'd be lovely to have people come and join us there.
Amazing, we definitely will. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks Monica.